All right, well, welcome this afternoon. I'm here to talk about Pulp. So my name is Michael Hrivnak. I work at Red Hat. I've been at Red Hat for just shy of a year now. I'm a software engineer working on the Pulp project. I've been having a really good time at Red Hat. And today, what we're going to talk about is the Puppet features, of course, of Pulp. That's why we're all here. Pulp, what is Pulp? Pulp solves a problem that's pretty generic across a lot of content types. Lots of content types have collections, repositories you might call them. You might call it the Puppet Forge, you might call it a Yum repository or a Debian repository. You might just call it a folder full of JPEGs or ISOs. Pulp endeavors to be able to manage all of these things in the same fundamental way while facilitating the differences in each different kind of content. So, for reasons you can probably guess, Pulp started in version 1 managing Yum repositories, and only Yum repositories. And that worked pretty well for a lot of purposes. It's out in production today, serving a lot of traffic. But Pulp version 2, which came out at the beginning of this January, expanded to be generic, content type agnostic. And that's where the Puppet support really jumped in. So the two primary functions that Pulp serves are to manage repositories of content, something like a local forge of your own Puppet modules or a Yum repository, and then to be able to push that content out to client machines. We have an agent that runs and a relationship that happens there that we'll see a little bit more in a few minutes. Today we have RPM and Puppet module support. We'll be adding some more things to that. Pulp is the future of Red Hat Satellite. It's a part of a project called Catello. Catello is going to be the main user interface piece that brings together 3 other projects, one of which is Pulp, to provide the next version or the next generation of Red Hat's Satellite project. We do have Mr. Brian Carney sitting up here in the red shirt. He is a very important person on the Catello project. He is first responsible for the whole thing. If you have any questions about the future of that, he's your guy. Pulp is open source, completely open source on GitHub. The kind of open source, not where we're just dropping each release on GitHub, but every day you can go see my branch right now and see what kind of mess I made yesterday. Pull requests are out there. You can see how we review. You can get on there and review my pull requests if you like. It's all right there. We love contributions. And Pulp is all written in Python. So it all starts with creating a repository. So on a Pulp server, you can have this notion of any number of repositories of different types of content. So you create a new repository. In this case, we're going to call it a Puppet repository, right? You're going to put Puppet modules in it. So now you can take that repository and you have 2 options for how to get content in. You can aim it at some upstream data source, like give it the URL to Puppet Forge. In case of RPMs, you can give it a URL to a Yum repository. Maybe it's a CentOS repository, or maybe it's Pulp's RPM repository, or something else. And it will sync in either all or some subset that you define of the content that is hosted on that upstream source. You can set that to run on a schedule potentially, if you want to get updates every night into your testing repository, for example, or you can just run it manually. The second option is you can upload your own content. So you create a module, you publish it, you get this tarball, and then you run a Pulp upload command, and it takes that module and puts it on the Pulp server in a repository you designate. And then once you have this repository and these collections of repositories, you can copy different pieces of content, like a Puppet module, from one repository to another, and these copies are very cheap. It's essentially just a reference in the database. So you can have the same module in 100 different repositories very quickly, very storage efficient, and so on. We'll see a couple of use cases later on where that's really valuable. And then the second primary function here is publishing the repository. So you figure out how you want to get content in your repository from these variety of sources, and then you are ready to publish it. Publishing it could mean a variety of different things. In the case of Yum repositories, we have a couple of different options. You can publish a brand new Yum repository hosted locally on this server, or you can publish it as a series of ISOs, potentially. And then with Puppet modules, you can publish as a new Forge-like repository. Or if you want to publish to different kinds of mediums, that's all very possible. Let's see where we are here. And then once you've published it, you can, like I said, push content out to a variety of clients that you have pre-registered to be essentially attached to this repository you've created. So in terms of content types, we have the RPM family of things. We have Puppet modules today. We have more things in the pipeline. Probably the next thing in the line is going to be JBoss types of content. Again, for reasons you can probably guess. We have Debian support that's been partially implemented through a 100% community effort, which has been pretty exciting. It's a little bit stalled at the moment. If anybody's interested in getting involved in that, we'd love to have some more involvement there and guidance. You can hop in our IRC channel, pound Pulp on Freenode, and ask about Debian support there. Python packages are another thing that we really want to be able to manage. Similar to hosting your own Puppet Forge-like thing, host your own Python package index would be a really valuable thing for a lot of people. And then we're also looking very seriously at Microsoft content, being able to host and manage repositories of the kinds of content that they consume. So we have this idea of consumers. This is the concept of pushing content out. So a consumer is any machine that you want to connect with a server, a Pulp server, and say, you as a consumer are now bound to some number of repositories on the Pulp server. It communicates via AMQP. You can do any number of things. We have install, update, and remove types of commands, of course, already there. You can potentially reboot the consumer if a reboot is required after installing some content. And then it's very easy to implement other actions. If you wanted to maybe restart a service or something, or any other action you would need to perform on the machine, you can pretty easily program in and be able to do. Any questions so far? Cool. I'm going to get in then to the live demo portion. Gotta stop it first. All right. Get the size right, and then we'll be off to the races. Oh, how sad, we're off the side of the screen. Well, let me fix that. If I can. Okay. I think that'll do. Excellent. So, as we started, the first thing that we want to do is create a repository. So here we're going to just issue a basic command. It's going to create a new repository for us. So the Pulp admin command is your primary interface to managing Pulp. Pulp itself doesn't have a graphical interface, but Catello is essentially the very nice web interface that integrates Pulp with some other projects. But in terms of just Pulp itself, the Pulp admin command is the way we're going. This is a very hierarchically laid out command line tool, which allows us to add and subtract large feature sets. So you can see the second word here we have is Puppet. So this entire Puppet section of functionality could be uninstalled. And you say, you know, I don't want Puppet support, get rid of that. That won't be part of the command anymore. Or we can add new ones. You can say Pulp admin Debian or Pulp admin JBoss or whatever. So we've made it easy to add and subtract features essentially on the fly. We're doing repository management. This is a create command. We've given it an ID. And then we've given it this feed, an upstream feed of the actual Puppet Forge. And at the end here, we've added this query option. You can actually add multiple queries if you want. This does just a very basic, dumb search to match against names of modules and pull in anything from Puppet Forge that has that module name. So there, we've created our repository, and we're going to go ahead and let's see, we've named it very creatively stuff, and we're going to go ahead and run a sync operation here. Sync is where we tell it to, okay, go ahead and connect to that upstream source, pull in that content that I asked for. So a lot of things just flew by there. See, most of it's still on the screen. We first downloaded the metadata, see what modules are available for me to get. We actually downloaded those modules. It was very fast because Puppet modules aren't very big. We published the modules. That's an important step and an important feature of Pulp that we'll see again in just a moment, that publishing is separate from editing or managing a repository. And then there's some publish steps, and we were done. So let's see, now we can take a look at our repositories on this machine. Beforehand, I went ahead and synced all of Puppet Forge. At that time, there were about 1,256 modules available. I had that mostly just in case I didn't have connectivity here today. And then we have this new stuff repository. You can see there are 13 Puppet modules in there. See an example of uploading the module now. So here's an upload command. This one looks a little bit funny because it has the word upload twice. But this comes back to the hierarchical nature of we're doing Puppet content, we're managing a repository, we're managing upload features. Within the things we can do in terms of uploads, we want to actually upload something. And then we've specified the repository, and then I've just shamelessly grabbed essentially a random module downloaded from Puppet Forge, this Minecraft by Mr. Brandon, who I thank for being a part of this demo today. We can upload this, and we have similar things. We looked at some of the metadata for that module, we created a request to upload it, we actually uploaded it, it's in the repository, and we're good to go. Now, like I said a moment ago, publishing is different than modifying. So when we published automatically after syncing this repository, that did, well, heck, I'll just go ahead and show you, is it created on this web server that's running on this Pulp server. At this URL, under Pulp and Puppet, we can see these two repositories that we have. The act of publishing regenerates all this data and puts it in the web server's availability zone. So we can look under here, and this looks basically like you would see a normal Forge-like repository looking. So now, if we come back and do an actual publish, so our publish command, similar kind of deal. It's off. We're publishing a repository. Publishes can be scheduled, which is why we have the run command here. You can either run or schedule these things. Specify the repository ID. Boom. Now we've gone from 13 to 14 modules. That 14th module is available on the web server. Refresh, and now we've got this letter B. Sure enough, there's our guy Brandon, and his module Minecraft is there. So this is a nice feature because you can make whatever modifications you want to your repository without those changes being reflected live to whoever is interacting with your repository. Whatever client machines are grabbing stuff, they're not going to see your changes until you're ready to publish them. And even that auto-publishing feature at the time of syncing content in is optional. You can turn that off. All right. Questions now? Cool. All right, well, I'll keep moving to look at some consumer features. So I have two VMs going here. This one that we're looking at is just a Rel 6 server, as you can see by the name. If we look here, Pulp admin, the consumer section of this command, we're just going to list all of our consumers, and there are none. So let's add a consumer. We're going to switch over to another VM that is a consumer. And the first operation is registering this consumer. Registering is not specific to a content type, so we can register this consumer, and once it's registered, we can bind to the GNOME repository, we can bind to Puppet repositories, or any other kinds that happen to be available. So we have a Pulp consumer command. This is what, the command available on consumer machines. We have to authenticate for this step, so I've given a username of admin. We want to register. We have chosen an identity for ourselves as creatively, again, con1. It has to be unique. And actually, in the Pulp consumer settings file is where the actual destination server has been set. So that's why we don't have to specify the endpoint here. We do need to run this one as root because it needs to write some data for the Pulp agent, which has to run as root for obvious reasons. You want to be installing content automatically. Great, so we have successfully registered. And the next step is to bind to one of those repositories that we have. So here the Pulp consumer command has, again, content type specific areas. We have the Puppet area. We want to perform a bind operation, and we've specified the name of the repository we want to bind to. And there we are. Now, let me take a step back for a moment and tell you about versions and releases of Pulp. So we released the big rewrite of Pulp, version 2.0 in January, beginning of January. We're aiming for a new release, new minor release, about every quarter. So we released at the very beginning of April 2.1. And that's what we're looking at here. Is, actually 2.1.1, which that Z point release was released just maybe a week or two ago. This particular command reveals the asynchronous nature of Pulp. A lot of these commands will run potentially in the background. They might be delayed and run later if there's resource contention going on. But the next version of Pulp has much nicer and friendlier output here. Instead of giving you these horrible task IDs to here, just go deal with these task IDs and go use them to look and see what happened. The next release of Pulp has some nice polling, and it will show you, much like with the publish and sync steps, step by step, how the progress is going. Nonetheless, here we are. We've done our register, we've done our bind. Let's go take a look at this consumer list again. We see we have a consumer, we see its ID, we see under the list of bindings there's the name Forge. That's the name of the repository we just bound to. And there's an opportunity to add some other metadata. We could give it a description, we could add, there's just a notes, is a free-for-all, anything you want to put in there. And we're now ready to actually manage some content on this guy. So, yes, well let's prove first that we don't have any content already on this guy. Alright, so we have some exciting output here. The point of that is there are no Puppet modules installed on this box at the moment. And we are going to come over here and actually install the standard library that was just so highly talked up. So, oh no, I'm on the wrong box. Sorry. Back on the server, this is where we can interact with the consumer machine and tell the server, hey, I want you to take this content and tell that consumer install this content. So that's what we're going to do here with this command. Pulp admin, we're in the Puppet area, the consumer management area. We want to run and install. Again, we have the word run there because you can also schedule these operations potentially as opposed to running them immediately. We've specified the consumer ID, we've specified the author name and version of the module we want to install, and we're off to the races. One change was made, it looks like we were successful. Let's go take a peek. There we are, so we've installed that module on the consumer. So now what we're going to do is, I'll demonstrate the update command. Did I just hear a snore? I'll liven this thing up a little bit. Okay. Very similar command. Essentially, we've just replaced the word install with update, and I got rid of the version specification. So this is going to just tell the Puppet, well, essentially this is a pretty thin wrapper around the Puppet module tool. So this is going to run a Puppet module. I think upgrade is the term for that tool. It's just going to run that without a version, which means it'll automatically get the latest and greatest version it has available in this repository. Again, one change is made, we're looking good, but let's just come over and improve it. And we've gone from 3.1.1 to the latest and greatest as of about yesterday, 4.1.0. So we're looking good. Of course, the last major thing we can do is uninstall this stuff, despite how highly it's been praised. Just hasn't gone so well. Alright, we are back on the server. So on the server, very similar command, we're just at uninstall. All the other stuff is pretty much the same. And that guy is toast. Gone. So those are the basic steps. There's also a reboot command you could issue. And again, this is designed to be very extensible. So if you have other commands you want to be able to issue in this way, you can add them without a lot of fuss. It does involve some Python, but we've tried to make it as painless as we can. There's some group features. So you can create groups of consumers and address an entire group at a time. Now, caveat is that's a bit talking about the future. We haven't implemented the group features for Puppet support yet, largely because our Puppet features are very new. We haven't had a lot of community feedback yet, so if that's a feature that sounds interesting to you, let us know. Hop on the email list and tell us, I'd like to be able to address a group of Puppet masters potentially and issue commands to them all at once. Or any features, any use cases you find for Pulp, we'd really be interested in hearing about them. So there will be some contact info again at the end of this. But that's the general disclaimer here. Any questions at this point? Cool. All right, I'll keep moving. Let's look under the covers a little bit at how this whole thing actually operates. All right, so I'm just going to stick with this consumer for the moment. So this is a bit more familiar territory for most people in this room. We're looking at the real Puppet module install command, and we specify a module repository with a URL. This is how you tell that command to not go use the normal Puppet forge, but your own. One problem with this, that is that Pulp has this idea of any number of repositories on the same web host, named host in particular. So on this rel6 server.local, I might have 100 different repositories. How in the world am I going to tell this thing which one I want to use? Because the Puppet module tool wasn't really designed with that in mind. So we had to do a lot of head scratching on this one, and ended up with a little bit of what you might call shenanigans. We're going to fall back to this idea of, okay, where in this URL can we add information? We could add a path, right? So I could say after local here, repos, Puppet, and give it that repo ID that we used before, right? Wrong. We cannot do that only because the Puppet module tool makes some assumptions about the endpoint it's talking to in terms of using absolute URL paths instead of relative. So that's not going to actually work at this moment with the version 1 of the Puppet API, of the Forge API. So where else in this URL can we put some information? There aren't many choices left, but we do have one choice, and that is right here. We can do basic auth in the URL. So I have a unique identity. I am consumer1. It's kind of like a username, right? Go with me on this for a moment. In terms of password, we don't really want a password, so we've just adopted a dot as essentially a null value in this case. So here, this is gonna tell the Pulp server when it connects, this is my identity. I'm a bound registered consumer. You know what repositories I'm bound to. You figure out what repository to get this module out of, and leave me out of it. The exciting part of this is that this allows you to now address multiple repositories in one Puppet module command. So potentially you have a repository where you just have a local mirror of Puppet Forge. Good. Now you have a second repository that is your own in-house stuff. And you want to be able to install content from both of those at the same time, potentially with the same command without having to monkey around. You can do that with this. Register, bind to multiple repositories, and let Pulp resolve which repository has the module that you're trying to install. So anyway, it's all very long-winded way to say that there you can do it. It talked to Pulp, it decided what repository you were bound to, and it found that module and installed it. It even resolved the dependency for you, and life is beautiful. Now, supposing you don't want to deal with all that Pulp consumer nonsense and have a Pulp agent running on these machines and all this extra stuff, there is another option. This one I can't really defend quite so well, except to say that there's no other way to accomplish this that isn't completely ridiculous. Or if there is, I'd like to hear about it. And if you'd like to hear the ridiculous ideas, I can tell you those at Tyler's afterwards. But we can, in the password field, specify a repository name, like this. So if you just want to say, just give me this repository, it will do that as well. We got an error because that thing's already installed. But anyway, you get the point. Any questions about any of that? Looking under the covers, not real important, generally speaking, but if you're interested in the implementation, that's how it goes. We can take one more peek at how this API looks. So let's see, we'll see. So this is looking at the API that you hit. Every time you do a Puppet module install type of thing and hit something like Puppet Forge, it's hitting this API that will then return to you information about what modules are available that fit the criteria you just specified. Returns a nice JSON document. There it is. It's giving us the newest version of the standard library. This is essentially the API that we reverse engineered to facilitate using the Puppet module tool against the Pulp server. So here we have a very similar command, but here now we're talking to my Pulp server. Basically, that's the same thing. We give fully qualified, full absolute URLs there, and that works really nice. That's how we're able to specify one repository or another, and this will handle dependency resolution as well, if you need that. We can probably demo that here by doing something like this. We're going to get some devastating output, so we need less. So here, similar, looking at the Java module, it depends on the standard library. Then it gives us every version of the standard library that's ever been created. And then it's up to the Puppet module tool to interpret those results and decide what it wants to do. Questions about that? Cool. Let's go back to the irregularly scheduled programming here. Let's see, where are we? Here we are. Pulp nodes. Pulp nodes is a relatively new feature. It basically allows you to have one Pulp server that is a parent Pulp server, if you go with me on that, and then multiple child Pulp servers that essentially mirror the content from the parent, but you can select which content you want to mirror per repository. This is useful for maybe just load balancing. Another very popular use case there is to put something behind a firewall. The child Pulp server that you want your infrastructure to interact with is behind a very strict firewall, that kind of thing. But it's a really interesting new feature. So here's one of the more popular use cases, is to promote your in-house content through multiple repositories. Your developers might have their own repository that they are grabbing stuff from and interacting with. You have a testing repository that your testing infrastructure is set up to use, and then finally your production repository. And with those copy operations I talked about before, you can easily just selectively copy certain modules from your development and your testing, and all it is one entry in a database, and you're done, and it's there. Well, of course, a publish operation as well, as we talked about earlier. This is useful for all kinds of development patterns. Okay, one more quick demo here. You can look at how this copy feature works. It's pretty powerful and pretty well integrated with the other features of Pulp. And server, we're good. So we're going to create a new repository that's just empty. No content, no upstream feed, no nothing. Just new repository. I call it testing. So this is, we'll say this is our testing environment is set up to pull modules from this testing repository. Now I'm going to go do a search. For the moment, we'll just humorously refer to that forage repository I have as our development or our untrusted repository, not for any real reasons except for demo purposes. So I'm going to search that forage repository here, and I'm doing a string equality match to say the name of the module must equal Minecraft. So do this search, and there it went. It found that module that I uploaded earlier. It's showing us all the metadata about it. Now comes the exciting part. You can concoct whatever search command you want to match whatever set of modules you want to copy with this command. And there are lots of different operators. You can do regular expression matching, you can do limiting and sorting and all kinds of stuff. Once you're happy with your result set here, you can come back and just change a couple of things. Change this to say copy from repo ID, and now give it a destination. Practically the same command, and I've blown something up. Could not be testing. Thank you. All right. This is another one of those commands where in 2.2, which should be released beginning of July, this command will show you very nice progress as it goes along, instead of insisting that you go look at this task. But we'll humor it for the moment. There's that task. It executed asynchronously. It was successful. We can look at our list of repositories. We see that that testing repository has one Puppet module in it now, so we're successful. So that's the basics of how you can address that use case, promoting content. Back to the beginning. Another use case I mentioned earlier, this future use case, once we have Python package index support, being able to have your own local version of that, add your own custom packages to that, and then let your infrastructure install from your local Python package index. Anybody use the Python package index here very much or very familiar with it? One of the problems with it is that old versions of stuff tend to disappear, which is not cool when you depend on those old versions. So this is a way to guarantee that the versions you are depending on, your in-house stuff, are going to continue to be available in the future. Pulp is very extensible. We'll get real crazy into the details of this. This is gone into more detail in other longer presentations here, but there are basically three components. So say you want to implement new support for some other content type we haven't thought of. Plugins are our term for the server-side stuff that you interact with. So we have very well-defined API, well-documented, everything's in one place to tell you essentially what we need is a definition in a JSON file. What's your content type? What does it look like? So for Puppet module, we have a name, an author, and a version are the unique key, essentially. What indexes do we need to have? This is all being powered by Mongo, by the way. Then we have this importer and distributor. An importer is just a way for Pulp to know, for you to sit between your content and Pulp. Pulp knows how to manage a repository of content. It doesn't know about Puppet modules. So your importer knows how to take a feed and then go, okay, talk to the Puppet Forge, download stuff, maybe validate or check some checksums or whatever you need to do, and then hand that to Pulp through Pulp's API. That importer piece is very well defined and separate from the core of Pulp. Similar with the distributor, that's how you publish stuff. So Pulp has all this content. It doesn't know what it's supposed to look like after it's published. This is essentially Pulp says as it's the core platform, I'm ready to publish stuff. You know what a Puppet repository is supposed to look like. Here's the content. You create something. It might be on a web server like we have here. It might be ISOs. It might be spit out a torrent file or any other kinds of things you could dream of. Extensions. This is basically just the command line stuff is extensible, like I kind of mentioned before. Handlers. This is the stuff that runs on the actual consumer machines. So if you want to have a new activity, like if you want to restart the service, you can write a new handler. It's very, again, a well-defined API, a small amount of code. It is in Python that you write that just plugs right in. It's auto-discovered, and it says Pulp is going to give you as a handler a well-defined message that tells you what you are supposed to do, and then it's up to you to decide how to do that. So you declare to Pulp, hey, I can do the service restart kind of operation. And when that message comes in on the AMQP bus, hands that to you as a handler, and you're responsible for doing it. Pulp there are a variety of ways to integrate with it. It's probably not worth getting into too deeply, but there's a REST API, and that's how the command line utilities communicate with it. That's mostly how Tello communicates with it. We also have an AMQP topic exchange and some other things you can do. We have a coordinator. So I hinted at this earlier. A lot of operations in Pulp are asynchronous. There's a lot of potential for resource contention. Maybe I'm in the middle of syncing a repository and then you come in and try to delete it. Pulp's going to say, no, you can't delete it just yet because Michael's over there syncing it right now, or something like that. This coordinator manages that. It restricts the number of concurrent heavy operations that can happen, things like that. We have very thorough documentation. It's always going to be here at pulpproject.org/docs. There's both thorough user documentation as well as separate developer documentation. If there's anything you would like documented that you just don't find the answer to there, let us know. I want to document it. Very committed to having thorough and useful documentation, and accurate documentation. Pretty sure we do a good job. You never know. Find any errors, please let me know. So, that brings me to the end of my talking, and it's your turn to ask me some questions. Yes, please.
How does Pulp store, I'll just use the term objects. How does it store objects in Pulp itself?
The question is, how does Pulp store objects? It stores them in Mongo as essentially a JSON type object. We have an abstract notion of a unit that is, schemaless, which is helped by Mongo. So we store whatever you give us, essentially, in terms of, for Puppet Mongo, we've got the name, we've got the version, we've got the author. There's some other metadata on there. Those are the 3 required ones. We have an index for that. And then this notion in Pulp of a unit includes a link, an optional link to some file on disk. For any given there's one big place where it puts all of the content, and then for any given repository that you publish it, you're essentially symlinking into that big pool. But Pulp tells you, this is where I want you to put the file, and give me some JSON, and that's it. Does that basically answer the question? Cool. What else? Please.
I know it's early days, but do you know of anyone using this now in production to manage their Puppet code?
I don't. It's been rather quiet. We have gotten a few bug reports from the community, so that implies that somebody's using it, but I don't know much information about how they're using it or if they're having much success. But we'd love to see more activity.
Well, it's not Puppet related, but what do you see most of your users using this for, basically?
The Puppet features in particular, or just Pulp in general?
Pulp in general.
Pulp. Well, most of our users are likely, at least in the next probably year or so, to be satellite users. So Red Hat customers running Red Hat Enterprise Linux and satellite is, of course, the long-standing tool set that helps you manage large infrastructure of Red Hat Enterprise Linux servers and what content is where. So the next generation of that is going to be Pulp. That's going to be the primary use case. It is going to include some Puppet features. Of course, the primary feature there is managing your young repositories and all that content. So for the short term, that's the bulk of it. But we want to be very active in other communities. We want Puppet activity. So please, if this sounds interesting, use it. We're available in Pound Pulp on Freenode, certainly during normal business hours. It's a little quiet on the weekends, but we love to hear any feedback.
About Ruby at all?
Sorry?
You want to talk about Ruby at all?
I don't know a whole lot about Ruby, except that it exists and it uses Pulp currently.
So we use it as part of our distribution network. So if you are consuming Enterprise Linux on the cloud, Pulp is mirroring the content from our CDN into the Amazon cloud. And in each of the regions, there are Pulp nodes, so that way the content is more co-located where the machines are running. So if you do a YUM update on one of our AMIs, it's pulling from a Pulp node that's been managed by a Pulp master that is maintains in a different region. So that's the use case we see a lot of people doing. When you're it'll shop, you want the content in your environment in case it goes away. So you're mirroring that content, and then you're using the repo cloning to do environment or whatever else. And then if you're a big data center, you're schlepping the code around the Pulp nodes that are geographically co-located to your machines.
Yeah, excellent point. Just the short version of that, if anyone didn't hear, is that Pulp is out in production today in some of the large cloud infrastructure environments like Amazon. If you're using Red Hat Enterprise Linux AMIs in there, you are getting your updates from a Pulp server that uses this Pulp nodes concept where there's a master and it's essentially mirrored to the different availability zones and whatnot within the Amazon cloud.
Rich Cotello, that's the open source stuff with Fedora, right? So I'm assuming the file forms, I think it's the commercial version of Cotello, or
It'll be satellite version 6. Okay.
Yeah.
But actually, yeah, so exactly what
Yeah, so the essential information of that is that Cotello is the fully open source project that is going to be the basis of Satellite 6, which is coming in the future sometime. Anything else? Please.
So how closely tied to MongoDB is Pulp? Is there any possible other backend that might be used in the future?
Question is, how closely tied is Pulp to Mongo? The answer is pretty closely tied. it would take a big effort to change at this point. I'd like to improve that, but I wouldn't see that happening until maybe a 3.0. But your specific reasons in mind, I'd be interested to hear.
I would just, in general, it's yet another thing to set up. So if you already have some in, MySQL, for example, it might be.
Fair enough. Anyone else?
For the repositories, large amounts of files, large files, what's it doing? Is it doing the Pulp server stuff to manage that data?
Does Pulp do anything to manage large files in particular?
And or larger files?
And or large repositories. There are some things. One is, just to get back to that idea that copies are cheap, if you want to copy a large file from one repository to another, it doesn't actually copy the file, thankfully. You just one copy of the file and references in the database to that file, to that unit which includes the file. We do potential bandwidth limiting. If you want to throttle the bandwidth that you're using to sync content down, you can do that. You can specify how many concurrent downloads you want to do. There's a reasonable single-digit default, I think, so you can bring that down to 1 if you want. You can blow it up to 50 if you're crazy, or whatever you want. Those are the main features. Is there anything else you had in mind?
A lot of error checking.
Yeah. Cool. Anybody else? Yes, in the back.
So let's say you're trying to sync a repository that doesn't keep history of their RPMs. Can you use Pulp to say, even though you're syncing that repo, keep all the history of the, so that you can go back?
Okay, so I think the basic question is, with repositories in Pulp, as you continue to sync, to what extent does it keep history, maybe even to the extent that you could go back? Not really, but that is a pretty commonly requested feature that I think is going to happen in the not too distant future. The idea to essentially snapshot a repository, something like that, maybe be able to roll back. We do provide options. You can specify, do you want to keep only the newest version of a particular unit, or do you want to keep all of them? Do you want to sync all of the versions available, or only the newest one? Those are all configurable. Does that answer your question?
Kind of. So then with the features that are already there, you could actually have, like for an RPM, if you sync daily, you could have all of the history, even if the remote repository removes those components, you can keep all of the ones that you've synced. Is that correct?
Absolutely, okay. Yes. Yep. The question is, as you sync from some upstream source, if content on that source starts disappearing, do you get to keep it on your local Pulp server? The answer is absolutely yes. The default is yes. You can turn that off if you want, but yeah, that's a big use case. For example, like I was talking about Python package index, I'd love to have that there because modules disappear from there all the time, and it's sometimes problematic.
Are you working with Ryan on version 2 of the API?
The question is, am I working with Ryan on version 2 of the API? I am in communication with Ryan and his team on that version of the API. They've been pretty helpful so far. We don't have a lot of details yet, but we're anxiously awaiting the details of the rollout of that. We'll definitely be on top of that. That's certainly going to make life a little easier on our end. That shenanigans of using basic auth credentials to do things that are never intended for will be able to theoretically go away at that point, we hope. So suffice to say, we're keeping a pretty close eye on it. We're excited about it. Yeah, and those guys have been very helpful and responsive. Yeah, so thank you to the Puppet team for that.
Sorry, we're not there yet.
What about other repo types like Perl modules, Gem and Ruby gems?
What about other content types like Perl modules, Ruby gems? We don't have them. Those two I don't think are really on our immediate roadmap, but we've tried to put it out there so that community contributions are pretty easy. So we have a very comprehensive developer guide if anybody wants to try to implement that themselves. We're very interested in that sort of involvement. We'll help you as much as we can in terms of guidance and answering questions and that sort of thing, but those two in particular I don't know that we have on our immediate radar. Probably the JBoss stuff may come first, Debian will come soon after. Microsoft is one, just, I don't know, It'd be nice to have Microsoft with their own content type, I guess. But we do have a lot of Ruby. Catello is a Ruby project, mostly. So we have some close by Ruby that might be able to take advantage of that. Anybody else have a question?